The college football experience, Alabama Crimson Tide 2024 season preview, team preview episode on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Yes, you can win up to 100 times the amount of money you enter with Underdog Fantasy Pick'em. Sign up today. The promo code TCESGPN to claim your special pick plus first time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. That's underdogfantasy.com. Promo code TCESGPN. We're also brought to you by the Mega Memorial Day merch sale. 50% off everything in the SGPN merch store with the promo code SGPNMay. So hop on over there and remember, as always, folks, to let it ride.
This is Mike Leach, head football coach at Mississippi State, and you're listening to SGPN. Let it ride.
Football experience. Roll Tide 2024 season preview, team preview episode as hey, you know what it is? It's June 1st. We are talking college football, previewing all 134 FBS teams like we do each and every year on the college football experience. So hit that like, hit that subscribe. Remember, you can hop on over to YouTube, youtube.com/the college experience. And yeah, I mean, this is an exciting time. It's a interesting time, I think, in the history of Alabama Crimson Tide football, and SEC football, and just college football in general with all the conference realignment, 12-team playoff coming. If you're wondering who the hell you're listening to, well, my name is Colby Swig, Database Dan, a.k.a. Pick Dundee. That's not a pick. This is a pick.
He was raised in the land down under, where a man thinks on his feet, speaks with his fists, and lives by his wits.
When Dundee happened, he was a superstar.
I'm probably drinking too much and celebrating too much and not sleeping. Would have killed a normal man, but no, that's gone. The medical advice I got from that was like being hit by lightning. Pretend it never happened and get on with your life.
Woo! That's what Alabama fans say. Saban, you want to pretend that, in a way, coming into this year, you want to pretend he never retired. All right? That's what you want to say.
That's wishful thinking right there.
You got a national championship coach. Didn't win the national championship, but played in the national, or coached in the national championship. Many national championships. We're going to talk all about it once again. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button. I am joined by my co-host. Give it up for former JMU Duke defensive back, the burrito eating, sideline kiss stealing, wheeling and dealing, Patty C in the place to be.
Hi-oh!
Let's get it going, buddy. It is time. It is football. It's finally college football season. Yes, the college baseball is still going on. Subscribe to the college baseball experience, but it is college football season. We talk college football year round on the college football experience, but the team previews, when the team previews start going, that's when you know the kick is close. And yeah, this year doing a little differently. We're previewing all, every year we preview every single team, but this year we're going conference first. SEC, they say it just means more. We're going to talk about that. I am joined by third man in the booth, and some say the SEC want to get their hands in on this state that this guy resides in. But yes, he is the DFS god himself. Give it up for the rooftop IPA drinking, home brew making, tobacco living, the free lot giving farmer, her the basketball league MVP. Give it up for NC Nick, ain't the place to be.
There we go. Roll Tide.
I know it's a Bosworth song, but it still sounds good.
They do play Oklahoma this year.
Ooh, that's a good point. Let me turn that off.
What do you think would happen if Nick Saban had Brian Bosworth on his roster?
Woo! I mean,
there might be some friction there.
I think it could work out. I think it could work
just
out.
a tad of friction.
Look at this era we're in, folks, and I have graphics for us. If you're listening to, or if you're just listening to this, that's okay too. But if you want to check it out, I've put on a lot of work on these graphics. that I'm going to present here in a second regarding the future and what's going on with the Alabama Crimson Tide in Tuscaloosa, Alabama there. So Nick Saban, let me just pull up these graphics now because I don't want to see my face. So Nick Saban is gone after 17 years at the helm there in Tuscaloosa, 201-29 in 17 seasons. Hard to replace that. It's going to be really hard to replace that.
That is a hell of a run. And also within the SEC, 117 wins, 18 losses in the toughest conference in the land. That is remarkable. A true dynasty, what he put together at Bama.
Now they bring in Kalen DeBoer. I know DeBoer.
Let's get it right. I think we're gonna need to establish some pronunciations here. So we might as well start.
DeBoer, I think it's how it's
DeBoer and the defensive coordinator, the new defensive coordinator. I've been calling him Womack the whole time. I think it's Womack. I don't know.
I think it's Womack. I don't know, but
we need to check on that one. Yeah.
Kalen DeBoer comes in 104-12 all time as a head coach. Obviously took the Washington Huskies to the national championship a year ago. Previously, before that, he was Jeff Tedford. He was the head coach of Fresno State, but took over for Jeff Tedford. He was the offensive coordinator for Jeff Tedford there at Fresno State. My pal, Jeff Tedford, great football coach. And prior to that, he won a national championship at Sioux Falls. I'll send anyone a college experience t-shirt if they've ever seen a Sioux Falls football game on television.
Just out of curiosity, based on what we're looking at on the screen, Nick Saban 201-29, Kalen DeBoer 104-12. Who has the better win percentage? You're
asking me to do quick math now.
Just taking a look at it.
I would assume it's DeBoer.
DeBoer does have the better win percentage, so maybe Alabama's in for an upgrade. I think that obviously sounds impossible, but
yeah.
Well, I tell you what.
What do we make of that hire?
I think it's a good hire. I think the guy's a proven winner. He's won wherever he's been. The only thing I will say is that he's only coached at the top level of college football for 2 seasons. He has 0 SEC experience. He has 0 experience basically anywhere other than kind of the Pacific Northwest or Indiana, where he was OC, but definitely nowhere near the South. Does that matter anymore? Probably not. So I think he'll be just fine. So I'd say it's a very good hire.
I think that is one of the knocks, though, is that he's not familiar with the South. If when I've listened to other people say, well, it's an interesting hire. I thought it was like, I understand both sides of this. Like, if you're Kalen DeBoer, you say, hey, I get a chance to coach at Alabama. Bear Bryant, Gene Stallings, Nick Saban, just great coaching history, great college football history. But I also don't know if I want to replace a legend. We saw Nick Saban was at the spring game, you know what I mean? Up at his booth. I just don't know that I'd want to replace a legend, but at the same time, Washington's entering the Big Ten. You're playing Rutgers and stuff. I don't know. And how can you say no to Alabama when they kind of throw all the resources into football? So
additionally, one more thing. Washington was going to lose a lot through graduation, through the NFL draft. It might have been the right time to strike while the iron's hot.
Fair.
That's true. I don't know that DeBoer's name had been tossed around at other big jobs, prior to this season. Obviously, this was his big breakout year. So the iron is piping hot. Strike. I
can tell you 2 years ago when we talked about him being hired by Washington, I remember at least Colby and I were in agreement that we thought it was a very good hire.
Thought it was a great hire. It was a great hire, and it clearly was.
There you go. See, we're never wrong.
See, subscribe to the college football experience. All right, but let's talk about this. I got some graphics here. So first off, his coaching staff, he brings in Nick staying at the old Sheridan at the offensive coordinator, him and Jamarcus Shepard both. So he wanted to bring in his guy, Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator from Washington a year ago, but he left for the Seattle Seahawks. So Sheridan and Shepard were on the staff. I think they coach quarterbacks, or one coach quarterbacks, one coach receivers. I think they're going to be co-OCs. They know what he wants, so I think that's a good thing. And then on the defensive side, this is where it was really interesting. Kane Womack leaves the head coaching spot at South Alabama there in the Sun Belt, where he was 22-16, coming off a 7-win season, to become the defensive coordinator of Alabama. They basically, the contract's bigger than what he was making at South Alabama. And also another head coach, the new defensive backs coach, Mo Lindquist there, was the sitting head coach at Buffalo. Now he was struggling at Buffalo. He was on the hot seat, just 14-23 at Buffalo. He comes over as the defensive backs coach. I believe Womack and DeBoer knew each other from the Indiana staff with Tom Allen. So what do you make of two sitting head coaches jumping over to become, essentially one a coordinator, the other one a position coach on that defensive side of the ball, and then the OC spot?
I think it means they have a lot of money. I think it also means it's a nice stepping stool to the next. I mean, yeah, you're probably in a better spot to get a big time Power 5 job, Power 4 job, as it were, being the Alabama coordinator or even a position coach in the case of Fran Brown, than you are as a head coach at some of these smaller schools. It's a big job.
If you look at it, I mean, DeBoer's fingerprints are going to be all over the offense. So I don't think that's quite as important. I think you want to look at the defense and see the people he brought in there. And that's where it makes a ton of sense. I mean, yeah, he's never coached in Alabama or the South before, but Womack has. So has Linguist. They're both very proven as coordinators and somewhat of a checkered past, I guess, with as being head coach. I think Womack was doing a good job at South Bama. Linguist, maybe not so much, but I think they're both very good hires. And more importantly, I think is the defensive side of the ball instead of offense.
Yeah, and look, to just update some people, maybe you're not familiar with Alabama's coaching history. Gene Stallings won a national championship there in 1992. He was 70-16-1, but then they went to Mike DeBose, who was 24-23 from 97 to 2000. Then they went to Dennis Franchione, who was just 2 years, 17-8. He bounces for Texas A&M. Then Mike Price came in. He's 0-1. He lost to the strip club in Tuscaloosa there that he went to, and he never coached a game in 2003. He did the spring game, to be fair. And then they went and hired Mike Shula, son of Dan Shula. And he was 20.
Don Shula, yeah.
Jeez. I've been drinking. Don Shula, yeah. He was 26-23. And then came in Nick Saban, who went 201-29. The reason why I bring this up is I'm curious. I know after Saban left LSU, they had Les Miles. They won a national championship. After Les Miles, they had Eddie O. They won a national championship. But if you look at what they did, kind of right before Saban, they definitely kind of had their struggles. I wonder if that could potentially, do you think it resorts back to that? Because look, I did this pre-Nick Saban, their record against SEC teams from 2000 to 2006, they were 3-4 against Arkansas, 1-6 against Auburn, 1-1 against Florida, 0-2 against Georgia. Now they were 2-0 against Kentucky, but 1-6 against LSU, 0-2 against Oklahoma. There was a non-con game back then. 5-2 against Ole Miss and Mississippi, and 5-2 against Mississippi State as well. 2-2 against South Carolina, 2-5 against Tennessee, and 4-0 against Vandy. My point is that should Alabama fans all be concerned? I know that they've had 17 years of glory in a way, but should they be concerned that it might jump back to this in the future?
I don't know. I mean, I do think, breaking news, coaching matters. Your head coach is important, so there is a potential for some regression or, for the success to not be quite as high as it was under Saban. But Alabama is going to have all the resources in the world to go get whatever your head coach wants. So,
but Texas A&M's had all the resources.
True.
Yeah, I mean, that's just playing devil's advocate right now.
Are any franchise or any university programs, coach proof? Can anybody sustain a shitty coach? Well, that's not what we think DeBoer is, but let's just say things don't go well. I mean, I think regardless of who you are, Michigan, they've had down years. Ohio State has always, ever since the 90s, Ohio State's been towards the top.
They've only had 3 coach. I guess Luke Fickell had a tough year, but that was extenuating circumstances.
I mean, Georgia's always been decent, but obviously it just took till recently for them to get over the hump. So is there a chance they fall back to like an 8-win, 9-win team every season? Sure.
Well, certainly against the schedule they're going to face this year, it's going to be a tough sledding. But in general, I mean, what are some of the coaches that have just absolutely dominated at lower levels of the sport? The first one that comes to mind is at Kansas. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now.
Lance Leipold.
Yeah. He absolutely dominates, and lo and behold, you put him in a position where he has a similar talent advantage. I don't even know if what was he, Whitewater, Leipold?
Wisconsin Whitewater. I mean, yeah, Chris Kleiman had a great run at North Dakota State, but Craig Bowl was the one that started that. All of those were successful.
I don't see a huge regression happening here. I think they're going to be fine.
Neither did the folks in Gainesville, Florida, either, though.
Fair.
Yeah. But
who was the coach? I mean, look, with Mullen, who had kind of had a little track record at Mississippi State of doing a little more with less.
He's talking about Billy Napier. He's talking about Billy Napier.
Well, they were fine with Mullen.
They were fine, but they were never at the level
they weren't super elite
championships.
But they weren't bad. I mean, they won the SEC, right?
Alabama
were they in the SEC championship?
Alabama fans, they want more than just not bad.
That's the problem. Is I think Saban has built that into that. And look, I'll even say, and I want to bring up these numbers too, because it's interesting. I was going through. Saban was 35-19 during his tenure at Alabama in 1-score games, right? And I thought it was pretty telling. Like out the gate in 2007, he was 4-4 in close games. Then in 2008, 3-0, 2009, 2-0. But then he went through like a stretch of like 10 years where he only played in like 1 close game or 2 close games per season. The past 3 years, though, you can see, and I don't know if you want to say it's NIL. I don't know if you want to say if it's transfer portal, even things out. In 2021, he was 4-1 in close games. 2022, 3-2 in close games. Last season, 4-1 in close games. But the reason why I bring that up is, you could tell that Alabama, based off of like looking at close games, was playing way more close games over the past 3 years than that 10-year stretch. So maybe he read the tea leaves and said, "Hey, man, everyone's catching up." Or I know he's 72 years old. Maybe he just wants to sit on an island.
That's fair.
But Kalen DeBoer is an interesting one because when he was at Washington, he last season he was 8-0 in 1-score games. So he played 8 1-score games at Washington. That was year 2 at Washington. Year 1, he was 4-2 in 1-score games. But here's what I do find interesting is that 18 of his 28 games at Washington were decided by 11 points or less. And 7 of those 18 games were against teams with losing records. So you saw it whether it was the Stanford game, you saw it whether it was the Arizona State game. And I wonder if that might be an issue. Playing Stanford or Arizona State, Arizona State this past year didn't have any talent. Other years they had talent, but Stanford is Stanford. Tough academics. So
it sounds like he was winning those games against a lesser competition that ended up being close. But maybe it's a motivational issue for him.
My point would be is that Saban would never play a close game against those.
Of course, he only had 2 years at Washington also. So it wasn't like he had a chance to, have the whole roster full of his guys, full of, So I think just the fact that he was winning all those games in only his second year speaks to how good of a coach he is.
That's true, but it does bring one other thing up that Colby kind of pointed out is Saban was built to dominate on both sides of the ball. If he didn't have a dominant offense, he certainly almost always had a dominant defense. The scores of Alabama games were like 54-7, typically. And that was with Saban calling off the dogs. Sometimes they'd have 50 at halftime. Yeah. They'd end up with 60,
But now DeBoer has the resources that Saban had at Alabama, which he did not.
Schematically, that's true. I mean, I suspect that they're going to be fine. I suspect they're going to be even more explosive than they were at Washington offensively, and defensively they're going to be better than they were at Washington. Although that wasn't. I mean, what were they, like number 100 Washington last year defensively? So they definitely need to improve if they want to maintain the standard at all. But
that's going to be the interesting thing too, is that you're going to have entirely new philosophies on offense and defense. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly they can implement those, and whether or not the Bama fans who are now used to a certain style of football, that style's gone, and you have a new style coming in.
And air raid offense there somewhat, and that's interesting because Josh Heupel runs the air raid. They're at veer and shoot, but also many wrinkles of the air raid from Mike Leach days. Same with Seth Luttrell, is the offense coordinator now at Oklahoma. You know, there's a lot of teams running the same stuff. So
there was a time in the SEC where running the air raid was zigging while everyone else was zagging. But you know, that is, you're right, it's probably no longer the case.
Yeah. And look, I'm going to dive into some of the offensive numbers from a year ago before we start talking about the transfer portal, what they lost in the NFL. But I want to tell you, you're listening to the College Football Experience, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. And look, the college baseball tournament is started and ready to go. Noah Beanick has you covered with the College Baseball Experience daily picks episode for every single game, regional previews, and much, much more. Plus, you know, it's Noah Beanick. He's the fucking man. He's a Michigan fan, though. He needs a down year.
One more Wolverine.
Yeah. Give him a follow, though. He does a great job covering college baseball. Subscribe to the College Baseball Experience. All right, here we go. Look, you look at Alabama's season a year ago, they were 24th in the nation in scoring points per game at 34 points per game. That charted at 4th within the SEC. Offensively, 58th in yards per game, charting at 8th in the SEC. 70th in passing at 220 yards per game, which charted for 9th in the SEC. Now rushing 47th in the nation, charting at 5th in the SEC. Do those numbers puzzle you a little bit?
Can I make a prediction first?
Yeah. What's that?
The passing numbers are going to be better this year coming up. I mean, look at what so last year, Washington was number 2 passing yards per game in the country. Year before that, they were number 1. His 1 year, his 2 years at Fresno, they were number 9th in the nation passing yards, number 5, and even going back to his OC days at Indiana, they were 15th in the nation passing yards per game. They're going to throw the rock.
Let's talk about this though. He has a history with some running quarterbacks before that at Sioux Falls and stuff, but he had Michael Penix at Indiana and Washington, who was a super experienced passing quarterback. Maybe not at Indiana, but at Washington, he was super experienced. At Indiana, it was still Michael Penix, though. At Fresno State, he had Jake Haener, who was a gift from Jeff Tedford. So,
Haener could run.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't
more
a
of a passer,
quarterback, but he was elusive.
That dude was an athlete.
Yeah, but
not an athlete like Jalen Milroe.
No.
Well, but Jalen Milroe is not the passer that those two are.
For sure.
So I think it's going to be very interesting. I've heard people say that they think they're going to run Milroe a lot more this year. But either way, do those numbers, is that shocking to you? Like those numbers within the SEC too?
For Alabama last year?
Yeah.
Definitely. I guess, you know, having watched them last year and seeing how flawed they were on the offensive line, seeing that Jalen Milroe essentially has a pop gun arm, not that surprising, but for what Alabama has been, definitely.
Yeah, certainly not as good as 3, 4, or 5 years ago.
Yeah. The defensive side of the ball, they were 16th in scoring per game at 19 points. And second in the SEC in pass defense at 191 yards per game. Third in the SEC in rush defense, 124.9 yards per game, and 5th in total yards. The rush defense was 5th in the SEC. Total yards, 313. They charted 3rd in the SEC in total defenses when it comes to yardage. That kind of doesn't surprise me. We know Georgia's defense was insane, but you knew Saban would always be like top 3, right?
Yeah.
That's still not overly impressive either, though.
Third, second, first.
Again, but compared to like 5, 6, 7 years ago, I mean, 33rd in the nation in rush defense. It's not great. It's not. It's good, but it's not, elite.
Yeah, I feel like 10 years ago or 7 years ago, that would be like top 5 or top 10
for sure.
Yeah.
Colby, you said this was Saban's maybe most impressive job last year.
Because I don't think the team was that good, and they got, controversially, they got to the college football playoffs, and they actually took Michigan to overtime, which was hilarious. Because if you watch that game, I think you thought Michigan. That's a credit to Saban, but a lot of those games from this past year, that I felt like they were on the ropes, and Saban was somehow. I mean the Auburn game for sure, but even before that, they lost to Texas. There was a couple games there in the middle.
They
the
were
South
tied
Florida
at
game
halftime with South Florida, 3-3.
There were games where you're just like, whoa.
And yet
Arkansas
they
game
could have won the national championship last year.
They could have won the national championship.
They were in the game with Texas that they lost, and they were clearly, leading late in the game against Michigan, who ended up winning it all.
Yeah, but I still think if you watch those games, Texas and Michigan were certainly the better teams.
Yeah, Michigan was doing everything they could to lose that game.
But let's talk about what they got coming back this season. What they lost. They lost 10 guys to the NFL draft, a couple free agents as well. YouTube.com/The College Experience. You see there. This is what's shocking to me this year, and really going to be hard to forecast just how good can Alabama be this year. Is when you lose guys like that. Obviously some of the big ones. The defensive side of the ball: Dallas Turner, Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry, all gone.
They lose these dudes every year.
I know, but the problem is they don't normally lose the amount of players they lost in the portal to hit you with. They lost 34 players in the portal as of now,
which is going to happen when there's a coaching change.
Yes, but I'm saying some of these guys were the best players. Some of them were like the best at their position within college football. You know what I mean? And that's why I think it becomes super interesting. At the quarterback spot, Julian Sayin, who might start at Ohio State. I don't know if you guys have heard this, but he has been playing. They brought in Will Howard, but apparently they're raving about Julian Sayin. He's now at Ohio State. Eli Holstein heads off the pit. Tyler Buckner, who started a game for them last year. The Notre Dame transfers in the portal. I don't know where he landed. I think he might have retired from football.
It's like playing the cross at Notre Dame again or something. I don't know if that's true.
Their top returning rusher was going to be Roy Dell Williams. No, he leaves for Florida State. Darian Claiborne also leaves. Their starting wide receivers from a year. Isaiah Bond, a starter a year ago. He's now at Texas. Malik Benson, a guy that they were excited about. Florida State. Ja'Cory Brooks, now at Louisville. Shaz Preston, another wideout to Tulane. Sawyer Dearman to San Jose State. And they also
many players.
Well, no, this is just one page.
I know. I think wide receivers.
Yeah, I think Amari Nieblak going to Texas was a starting tight end for them. I know they lost Miles Kitselman to Tennessee as well. Offensive lineman Seth McLaughlin, who started. I know he had the low snaps in the Michigan game. He's now starting at Ohio State. TJ Ferguson, another offensive lineman that I think they had some high hopes for, is at Florida State. James Brockemeyer heading over to TCU on the offensive side of the ball. Those are major hits. But
just real quick, I mean, I'm looking at the top receivers right now. Isaiah Bond. Do we catch? Is he coming back?
He's at Texas. Yeah.
He's at Texas. Okay, then we had Jermaine Burton to the draft.
Yeah,
Nieblak, you said was a transfer.
Texas.
Okay, and then Kobe Prentice is down there.
Back. He's back. Yeah.
But McClellan's gone. So they're losing a ton of.
That's what I'm saying. This did not happen. Obviously, it's a coaching change, but also it just didn't happen in years prior at Alabama, right?
Yeah.
Well, then you get to the defensive side of the ball. And like I said, Seth McLaughlin was a starter on the offensive line too. So, I mean, they took some hits on the O-line. The defensive side of the ball, they lose defensive lineman Anquan Barnes to Colorado, Moncal Goodwine to South Carolina, Curtis Perry to Virginia Tech, Isaiah Hastings to Syracuse. The big one here, linebacker Sean Murphy to Florida State. Also, Kendrick Blackshear to UTSA, as well as Ian Jackson. And then Caleb Downs, who might be the best defensive player in all of college football. He heads off to Ohio State. Des Ricks, a corner they were super excited about, heads to Texas A&M. Trey Amos heads to Ole Miss. Cornerback Jameer Grimsley to Florida. And then Earl Little, another corner to Florida State. Christian Story, another defensive back to Kentucky. Jake Pope, a safety they really liked, goes to Georgia. Another DB, Antonio Kite, goes to Auburn, which is just hold on.
Give me that music.
Shots fired.
I mean, how fucking pathetic do you have to be to transfer from Alabama to Auburn? Come on.
I thought Bama to Georgia was bad enough.
Yeah, unbelievable.
You got to have a grudge to do that.
Yeah. The long snapper Brock Quinn's gone, and the kicker Upton Belafonte heads to the Buffalo Bull. Look, they got Lindquist. We're taking Belafonte. All right. But good God, that's a lot of losses, man. That does not happen most years. And when you look at it, there's a reason that the number I was able to come up with, and it seems to be changing nonstop with the portal. I know the portal's closed, but you can still enter the portal and have that be a thing in August. I have it as 126 in the nation in returning production out of 134 teams.
Wow.
So those are major hits in my opinion.
Let me say this. If typically the Power 5 and especially the elite are usually the ones that stand to gain elite talent and have a pretty talented roster in the first place, but can pick and choose who they want. On years like this, like you said, never happened before, where an elite team just gets absolutely rated, which is going to happen with these coaching changes.
We do often see a lot of like backups on elite teams transfer out every year. We've seen that for the last 3 or 4 years.
But you don't normally see it. You normally see them transfer to like, lower P4s or mid majors. When you have like, what do we at here? I know like, 3 or 4 of these guys went to Texas, 5 went to Florida State. I think 2 or 3 went to Ohio State.
Yeah,
that's the thing that stands out. Texas A&M.
Don't see it at like the perennial like short list of contenders, which would be what Ohio State and
Texas A&M, because they spend as good as anybody.
They're not a contender though. They get rated. What I'm saying,
Texas A&M gets rated.
I feel like they did.
No, I think Texas A&M can go out and buy anybody, and
they can.
Well, that's
what I'm saying is who are the teams that are in it every year? I guess you could put LSU on that list. Alabama, Clemson has gotten a little hit by the portal lately.
They don't take transfers. Also.
They don't even take transfers in. But overall, usually a team of this caliber never gets smashed by the portal, and Alabama kind of did this year.
Well, I think it's the coaching change. That's all that it is. I mean, Georgia, for example, had 24 outgoing transfers this year. Most of them are not the caliber of some of the guys that Alabama lost, but I just think most of this is
Georgia's on that list too.
The coaching change.
Yeah. And but I think that's let's talk about what they did bring in, because they went out and they brought in a bunch of guys from Washington. Austin Mack is a quarterback that I think Alabama fans eventually are going to be super excited about. Now, we know they still have Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson's still on that roster. But Austin Mack is one to watch as far as like I think that's your passing quarterback moving forward. But Milroe is he's such an odd player in today's college football. I feel like he's like more closer to Tommy Frazier than he is in today's college football. But he's such a talent at the same time. I think he's a very unique player. So they bring in Austin Mack from Washington, also Jeremy Bernard, who's a stud wideout from Washington, follows him. Same with tight end Josh Cuevas, I think it is. Offensive lineman Parker Brailsfield also comes in from Washington. Naquil Bertrand comes in from Texas A&M. That was a big one because he's penciled in to start, I believe. Offensive lineman Gino Vandermark from Michigan State. That's what they brought in on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, they went to the Texas A&M again. LT Overton comes in. Damani Jackson was a big-time recruit for USC, transfers in. King Mack, great name, safety from Penn State. Keon Saab coming in from Michigan. He's penciled in to be a starter. And kicker Graham Nicholson, who was the best kicker in the nation last year to many at Miami, Ohio.
The last Keon we saw transfer from the state of Michigan did all right. That was at Florida State with Keon Coleman last year. That was Michigan State. So maybe similar luck with Alabama here.
But still, they didn't add a shit ton of transfers. So they're just counting on the recruiting, counting on the depth of that roster.
Well, the recruiting has not fallen off. I believe Alabama finished this year second best recruiting class in the nation, tied with Ohio State for bringing in the most 5-stars, 6 of them.
Yeah.
Alabama is absolutely reloading still. They're not going to be lacking for talent. They might be lacking for a little bit of depth that they would typically have, which they would probably have 3 deep depth, better than most of the programs in America.
Yeah.
But maybe it's like maybe they get hit a little bit on that level.
So the offense does return Jalen Milroe, who I thought was an exciting player. And I thought Nick Saban did a good job with him throughout the season. Struggled out the gate. They had that game they started Buckner. But after that, and that was the South Florida game, I believe, that I'm referring to. But after that, I thought he did a great job down the stretch. And I thought that he did a good job adjusting to his skill set. And that's going to be, I think, one of the things to watch with Kalen DeBoer. Obviously, he's had a great track record with quarterbacks. But how does he use a quarterback that necessarily he hasn't had in a while? Because Penix is much more of a thrower. Hainer is definitely much more of a thrower than Milroe. So
I think that's why if you're Milroe, you're excited because obviously you need to improve your throwing abilities. And you got a quarterback whisperer here that if all goes well, it's going to help you get to the next level. So I think that's why Milroe has to be excited to see what he could do in this offense.
Yeah. And Running back spot is a question mark right now. Jam Miller and Justice Haynes, they didn't run for a ton of yards last year. Probably incredibly talented, probably very good. But then the wide receiver spot, Patty C alluded to this earlier. Kobe Prentice back, Jalen Hale back, who showed flashes. I know they're also super excited about the 5-star freshman Ryan Williams that's coming in. CJ Dupree, tight end. I know he didn't start a lot of games for them, but he's still, I think, a solid tight end. I think
he did start a bunch of games at Maryland. So
yes, he did. And then Caden Proctor, that situation, and then their offensive line situation in general. I got what I think is penciled in as a starter, but the Caden Proctor situation, absolutely hilarious. Big time recruit out of Iowa. His final 2 schools are Alabama and Iowa. He goes his freshman year, plays for Alabama, transfers to Iowa in December after Saban's gone. Stays in that for one semester, the winter semester, and then he bounces back to Alabama. I mean, what's going on? He's from Iowa. He had to just get a big bag of cash that they couldn't match, right? I think it's got to be, right?
Most likely.
I want to know, did he accept the money from Iowa?
Yeah.
Did he have to give it back?
It's not like Alabama. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Iowa has cranked out a ton of O-line draft picks. So I don't think it's like he's looking at his future and saying, there's no future here at Iowa. I got to go back to Alabama.
That's what I'm saying.
Probably right.
Iowa puts a shit ton of players in the NFL.
Yeah. Especially,
yeah.
Them in tight ends.
So the offensive line, from the way I see it, that's guys that are returning. You look at the Proctor situation, quite hilarious. You also have, I was counting this. I think you only have 4 returning starters on the offensive side of the ball, depending on how you look at it. I know they if you say truly started a game, I think that number grows a little bit bigger. But as far as consistently starting, I think you're looking at 4 or 5. That is concerning. But I do think the offensive line still, like, maybe we shouldn't panic because the line of scrimmage, specifically the offensive line and defensive line, I think will be probably the most intact units on the team in a way.
Everything I'm hearing offensive line wise is that the interior O line, the center and the guards, should be maybe the best trio in the SEC or one of the top interior O linemen in the whole nation. It's the question mark are the tackles. One of them is Proctor, who as a freshman he struggled some, played better of late, but I think he's going to be pretty good. So I think he's fine. I think it's really the right tackle spot. Where it's kind of it's open for somebody to take that job, but we certainly don't have a for sure surefire right tackle right now. And both tackle spots you could argue could be a weakness.
Yeah. Look, we're going to talk the defensive side of the ball in a second here, but first I want to tell you that the college football experience is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Yes, the NBA playoffs still going on, and our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, wants to make it a lot more interesting. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. Playing their pick-up games is simple as selecting higher or lower on player stats like points, rebounds, assists, and much, much more. Make entries of all basketball or mix and match across your favorite sports. You can win up to 100 times the amount of money you enter. It's a ton of fun. You can mix NBA with, maybe you're a Birmingham Stallions fan. You think Adrian Martinez is going to kill it there in the UFL. Or when college football rolls around, they do a great job with college football. And Underdog's available in 30 different states, including California and Texas, and the great country of Canada there. So hop on over there, sign up with the promo code TCE SGPN to claim your special pick plus first time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code TCE SGPN. Yeah, the defensive side of the ball, as I alluded to.
Real quick, before we get to the defense, I want to talk about Jalen Milroe and the adjustment that both he and Kalen DeBoer are going to have to make. When we're looking at Michael Penix over the past few years, 555 attempts last year, 554 the year before, both in 15 and 13 games respectively. Prior to that, 220 passes in 6 games. So pretty much every year he's asking him to throw 30-plus passes. Meanwhile, Milroe threw about slightly over 20 passes last year per game. Conversely, running the ball, Kalen DeBoer or Jalen Milroe 161 attempts. Michael Penix only 35 last year in 14 and 15 games respectively. So it seems like, do you think Kalen DeBoer will be able to mold his offense around Milroe's preference to run the ball and ability to run the ball, or is it going to be a bad fit there?
That's going to be, I think, one of the best storylines going into this college football season. Now, like I said, at Sioux Falls, I believe he had a quarterback that ran heavy. So I do think he has had experience with that. But Sioux Falls and the SEC are very different. And that's I think why this college football season is so interesting. I think it's the most interesting season. I say this probably in the past 50 years, because you got the 12-team playoff. You have all these new conferences. You know what I mean? Whether you like it, whether you hate it, you can't tell me that it's not interesting. As far as I think, you alluded to this on our week by week preview that we've been doing, Nick. You don't know who's going to win a lot of these conferences. You think the Big Ten or Georgia and the SEC, you kind of like think that, but as far as everything else, and maybe Bama jumps up. We've never seen Kirby Smart against Kalen DeBoer. You know what I mean? So maybe it's just a different game.
Back to Patty's point, one other thing too is that looking at these Alabama receivers, I'd say they're a pretty average group. They're nowhere near as good as Odunze, Polk, and McMillan, the Washington trio last year. So,
but
I think it might
getting Bernard from Washington, I think, is huge.
Sure, it definitely helps.
Yeah. But they might look a lot better once they're getting the ball thrown them all the time.
I didn't think Prentice or Kendrick Law or the other returner, I didn't think any of the Alabama receivers looked great last year. And these guys were kind of behind them. So, and obviously Bernard was the fourth receiver for Washington. Now, was he just, behind three really good players? Yes, he was. But that doesn't mean he necessarily is as good as those guys when given the chance. So
they got the 5-star of Ryan Williams coming in too. I think that's one to watch. Yeah,
sure. But I think they might have to run the ball more so than DeBoer's done the last couple of years at Washington.
Who was the? I guess if they have to run the rock with the running back, who was it? Johnson.
At Washington, Dylan Johnson. Yeah,
Dylan Johnson. I mean, he was effective, but he was definitely like the second choice. They would pass to set up the run at Washington. So if they have to run to set up the pass, I think that might be a problem for DeBoer. I don't know. It remains to be seen. I haven't seen enough of him without elite quarterback play.
And to that point also, is Jam Miller and Justice Haynes all that good of running backs?
Up for the
because
job.
I didn't think the Bama running backs last year were that great either. I know J.C. McClellan got drafted in the 6th round, I think, and Woodell Williams. I think those guys were solid. They weren't bad. They were just pretty good. I thought it wasn't. Some of the other Bama running backs.
Well, you saw they had Jahmyr Gibbs the year before. That was a transfer get. They had Jermaine Burton this past year, transfer get. So Saban even, I think, might have whiffed on a couple recruits there because he had to go out and hit the portal to bring in some guys that were better. Maybe CJ Dupree from Maryland, but the defensive side of the ball, I do think the strong suit of the team is the defensive line. When I was going through and I was breaking down position by position, obviously you like the linebackers, Deontay Lawson and Jahad Campbell coming back. Both started a lot of games last year for them. But to me, the defensive line is I think why, if you want to be optimistic about Alabama's chances this year one of the DeBoer era, or the DeBoer era, I think it's and I know I have Otis's name there twice there. I messed up there, but it's the D line has got some key pieces back. Tim Keenan the third, Tim Smith, James Smith, and Jaheim Otis, who I actually put there twice. But besides that, the secondary, huge question mark. Malachi Moore's back. Devontae Smith didn't start for them. I know they're optimistic about him. But with Caleb Downs gone and those corners gone, I think that
Arnold and McKinstry, were they both first rounders? Arnold and McKinstry.
I think one
McKinstry was a second, early second.
Yeah.
And then also the last pick in the draft, Mr. Irrelevant, was the safety Jalen Key.
You lose 3 NFL defensive backs, and then a 4th NFL defensive back to the transfer portal. That's tough to replace,
especially when Womack is going to be running a 4.25.
Yeah, that's another thing we should talk about is going with the 4.25 was interesting. I don't know. I mean, I get it. The SEC's kind of can I go ahead and say this, that they're the new Big 12? Everyone said the Big 12 offense.
Not yet.
No, look, because the Big 12 is not the Big 12. The offenses aren't what they were 10 years ago. You look, I remember that Ole Miss LSU game.
Oh, are you saying, are they currently constructed probably similarly to the Big 12? Maybe, yeah.
Back then, and I don't mean as far as the strength of the conference. I'm talking about just Offense is way ahead of the
running.
You saw how many, like whether it was that Bama Tennessee game 2 years ago, it was what 52-49 or something, right? You saw last season Ole Miss LSU 55-49. You just got, and now you're adding Kalen DeBoer to the mix, and you have Steve Sarkisian in Texas coming in as well as Oklahoma. I just feel like this is an offense.
Those teams have been scoring for a minute. Yeah, you might be right.
But either way, the secondary I would say is the biggest room for concern on the defensive side of the ball. The defensive line, linebacking core look pretty damn solid, and maybe that helps the secondary. You know, a lot of people that coach secondary say you got a good D line. That means you got a good secondary. But win total. Let's talk about this. Win total sitting at 9.5 wins to win the SEC championship. They're at plus 850 to make the 12-team playoffs. Yes, to make the playoffs plus 100. No, minus 130 to win the Natty plus 1400. We're going to talk about it all in a second, folks. But I want to tell you the college football experience is brought to you by Rhythm. If you're betting on the NBA player props, then you need to download Rhythm. That's RITHMM. Rhythm gives you a menu of the best player props for every single NBA playoff game, making it easy to go through and find the best props to put your money on in a matter of seconds. Rhythm's predictions are backed by over 3 years of data, and a team of data scientists are fine-tuning their algorithm to give you the best shot at winning. Rhythm pairs its predictions with player prop graphs to help you feel a little bit more confident in your picks, which you can make from wherever you normally place your bets or if they're DFS picks. From superstars to bench players, Rhythm finds the best player prop lines, all backed by AI data without you needing to endlessly scroll through the sportsbook there. Start a free 7-day trial and start winning your NBA player props with Rhythm. Once again, that's RITHMM, available wherever you get your apps. All right. We are back on the college football experience. And are you shocked at that win total, NC Nick?
Well, I will say that how many years in a row has Alabama won double-digit games? It's quite a few. It's at least 17 for as long as Nick Saban's been there. So right off the bat, it seemed a little
I think you
low.
went 6-6
in year
first
one.
year there.
So
yeah,
I think 16 years. 16 years, right?
Yeah. Since 2008. They've won, and I guess one of those years, one of the wins was a bowl win. So technically, they would have had 9 regular season wins back in 2010. Other than that, pretty nice stretch of getting double-digit wins in the regular season. So off the bat, you say it might be a little low, but for other reasons, maybe this line, given that the roster turnover, the coaching change, and how difficult the schedule is, maybe the line is right where it should be.
Well, and another thing we got to factor into our handicap. Like I said, we've been doing the show a long time, but 12-team playoff. So you got to start programming our head to think like, wait, how many losses can you get in and make the playoffs? 3 at the most, you think?
For a team like Alabama against this schedule, at most.
I was going to say it's different. If you're an SEC or a Big 10 team, 3 and you could definitely get in. If you're a Big 12 or an ACC team, unless you win the conference championship and get your ticket punched that way, a 3-loss team in the ACC or Big 12 is not going to get in.
No. And remember, folks, like home team, the first round. I mean, if you're top 4, you get a bye. But after that first round on college campuses, I think it's going to be fucking awesome. But over and under at 9.5 wins, Patty C. What was your first thought when you saw that?
Just about right. I think obviously the road trips. What is it? Tennessee.
We're gonna go through it. Game
we'll
by
go
game.
through it. For first reaction, I mean, there is a potential that they just bottom out, but there's also a potential that they get some wins in these 50-50 games and hit like 10 or 11 wins.
They do have a Heisman candidate, so there's that.
It's true.
Well, one of the things I do want to talk about there, and by the way, I should note that when we were talking about the secondary, I didn't allude to the 5 stars that they have coming in. Xavier Brown coming in from California, and Jalen Mbakwe that I think they're super excited about, is Zay Mincy as well. All freshmen, and maybe the secondary is amazing with them. We just haven't seen it yet. But as far as the win total going, I do think I'm going to go back to what I said of Kalen DeBoer being 8-0 in 1-score games last year. I think if we remove Alabama from this equation, years past when we've done these exercises, we find that statistic to be heavy with luck.
Usually there's some aggression.
Yes. And that, I can't help but think of that Arizona State game where I thought Arizona State got hosed on a pass interference call where they picked it off and turned it and it would have won the game in Seattle there. So my first thought is, and remember, no more divisions, no more SEC. Now that might help Alabama, but what might hurt Alabama also is Oklahoma, Texas in the SEC.
I wonder. I mean, that's another factor is the transfer. I mean, is the realignment. But I wonder if in the modern scope of things, whether we should expect more of a regression when there's a coaching change than we previously have.
Yeah, or maybe more depending on how many players they bring in. I think he didn't bring in that many guys from Washington. It was only like I think 4 or 5.
Definitely something to monitor because, like you said, it was the opposite with Leipold going to Kansas. He brought half his team with him, and they were able to win immediately.
One more note about that win total: it is juiced, so it's plus 120 on the over, minus 140 on the under. So that tells you that Vegas thinks it's going to be probably a 9-3 team.
I'll be honest. I was looking at this and I'm going to get to going game by game, but last year, and remember they still got the 8-game schedule, by the way, 8 conference games. Even though you don't have the divisions, you still got 8 conference games. Last year, I took the average of the teams that Alabama played, and it came to 7-5. This year, based on last year's records, which I know can be refuted, but 8-4 would be the average of what they're playing this year. And I would actually make the argument when you consider that last year you had several first-year coaches on the schedule that like Galesh and
True.
Hugh Freeze, and even Fickle, who I know wasn't on the schedule last year. He's on the schedule this year. I think it's going to be harder. It's going to be. I
think there's no doubt this is a harder schedule than they had last year.
Do those stats include the FCS team?
No, I removed the FCS on both of those. Those are just through the 11 games. But look, here's the schedule right here. I rank this from first to hardest. If you look at what the number is on the right, I have the hardest game being 1, the easiest game being 12. But week 1, home to Western Kentucky. We think that's a win. They're 32.5-point favorites currently. I would say that's a win, but hey, Western Kentucky did win 8 games last year. What better time to catch them than week 1?
They've averaged over 8 wins per season over the last 3 years. But yeah, no problem there. Bama rolls.
Yeah. South Florida and Tuscaloosa week 2 with Alex gonna go to the Golesh, and look, they played them tough in Tampa. That was a Bama crowd. Can they go into Tuscaloosa week 2 and hang with the Tide?
It's the best time to catch them, period.
Like I like USF. I think they have a pretty good year. I think last year Ty Simpson and Tyler Buckner were the quarterbacks that got snaps, not Jalen Milroe. And I think Saban quickly realized his error.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be just fine at home for South Florida.
Here's the thing. And I years ago, I saw this. Again, I'll bring this up. Arizona with Rich Rodriguez when they were playing against Oregon, when they were a championship level team running the same spread read option offense. When you are running the same system as another team, you are better able to diagnose what they're doing because you see it every day in practice. I think South Florida just the fact that they're going to be in year 2, Byron Brown's coming back. If for some reason Alabama hasn't gotten this thing going yet, then maybe this game again stays close to halftime. But of course, Alabama is just going to body them over the course of 4 quarters. So definitely 2-0 here.
Well, week 3, they're at Wisconsin, and I want to circle this one because I know Wisconsin was just 7-5 a year ago, but Fickle's in year 2. The last time, LSU went up to Wisconsin, they lost in Green Bay. I think this is a losable game because I'll tell you this, that place is going to be rocking. You get Alabama coming into Madison, fucking Wisconsin.
That will be rocking.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think, and they both run the air raid and stuff, so it's like it's different. But I think that game's a lot closer than what people probably think on the win total side.
I mean, look, we always say it in college football: you go on the road, you lose. Now, this game is much tougher 7 or 8 years ago when Wisconsin was a better program. They were 7-6 last year, and you know what? They only beat one team with a winning record. Wisconsin's sole win over a team with a winning record was a win over Rutgers, who was also 7-6. they're not very good right now. And also, Wisconsin lost 3 home games last year. When's the last time Wisconsin lost three home games?
It's true, although they did implement a completely different system of offense than they've had for like the last 2 decades or more. Luke Fickell, brand new coach. I guess we're going to find out a lot about Luke Fickell because he did build and improve year by year at Cincinnati. So if we expect some, positive movement on their part, maybe this could become a tough road environment for Alabama to go into.
Oh, I think it's like a 50-50 game, man. I mean,
I don't know. 65-35.
Really?
Is it
Yeah,
losable? Yes.
Got it. Yeah.
Is it losable? Yes, but I have Bama at 3-0 going into the bye.
Yeah, me too.
I think this is much closer. I would give Bama like a 55-45 edge.
You were very down on Wisconsin last year too. What changed?
Well, I just think I'm down on Alabama, and that might be the thing. They get a bye week, and they're home to the Georgia Bulldogs. I have this Georgia favored in this game. I think Georgia beats them in Tuscaloosa, and I think they're 3-1.
Georgia coming off of again?
No, the next week Georgia has
both have
Auburn.
buys.
Yeah,
they both have buys.
Both have buys going into this.
Yep. And it's a rematch of the SEC championship game last year, and I do agree. I think Georgia remembers that. And
then they hit the road week. Technically, I think it's week 6 as they head to the construction zone there in Nashville. Take on Vanderbilt. Bring your hard hat. That's a win. But watch out.
23 straight for Alabama against Vandy.
Well, Diego Pissing Pavia took down Auburn. Maybe he makes it a clean sweep.
Kind of shocked it's not more than 23, if I'm being honest.
How
did Vanderbilt ever beat Alabama?
I'm not sure what happened in 1984, but they did.
Then after that, they're home to South Carolina and Shane B. Mama. That'll be a win. I think I don't really fear that one.
Most likely, yes.
But now they hit the road on October 19th. They head to Knoxville, Tennessee, and I have them as a dog in Knoxville. Tennessee won 9 games last year. They returned. We saw that quarterback look really good in the bowl game. I have Tennessee favored in this game.
You mentioned it last time they were in Knoxville. They lost in that 52-49 classic.
Yeah. So
again, if Galesh in South Florida running that similar spread that Alabama is running is a threat in Tuscaloosa, then obviously going to Rocky Top and facing his mentor in Heupel is going to be a problem for Alabama. I don't know. I mean, 50-50, flip a coin. Between some of the upcoming road games, I think there are some wins and some losses in there, but there are going to be some more losses on this schedule.
Is it a tougher schedule, or maybe we'll have this conversation once we get through it all? Okay, go ahead.
Then they're home to the Missouri Tigers, who won 11 games, I think it was last year. They returned a ton. They go out and get Nate Noel from App State in the portal.
They could be a top 10 team.
Yes, a lot of people high on Missouri. I think that's a game you circle. As far as I could see both teams, walking away with this one. I think Missouri actually has a little bit of a leg up because of the continuity, but by that point, tricky.
Yeah.
But do you guys see that as a for sure win for Bama, or
what
do you think?
No, I don't think they're going to lose to both Georgia and Missouri at home. They're probably going to lose to Georgia and probably beat Missouri, but this one is more of that 50-50 game. It could go either way.
I see Alabama as the definite favorite here, but I think there are starting to add up like some threats to lose. So over the course of the whole season, I think that the losses will add up a little bit.
Then they get a bye week after Missouri, and then they're heading to Baton Rouge to take on Brian Kelly and his family. I have LSU favored in this game as well. I think Nussmeier is going to be fine. I think that offense is going to be fine. The defense you worry about a little bit, but I think the offense will be fine. It's in Baton Rouge. If it was Nick Saban back, I think I might maybe say Alabama, but I got to lean LSU right now. Nick?
I mean, it's an extremely hard road trip that LSU could certainly win. LSU is probably a slight favorite. It's going to be tough.
What do you think, Brian Kelly without Jaden Daniels at his, or is it Jalen? I get those two confused all the time. Jaden Daniels at the helm. What do you say? Grant Nussmeier is the.
He's a baller. They're fine. I
think. Brian Kelly's history What was it? 2012 with Everett. I'm drawing a blank on it. That he took to the national championship with Notre Dame, was a mobile quarterback. But I feel like, generally speaking, Brian Kelly operates best with a pass-first quarterback at the helm. So they could improve offensively, even with all the pieces they've lost. I think LSU is the slight favorite there. I think between at Wisconsin, home against South Carolina, at Tennessee, home against Missouri, and at LSU, there's certainly one loss there. So I got them at least 2 losses at this point in the schedule.
Then they got the classic SEC matchup, Mercer against Alabama in November. Shout out to the Mercer Bears. Okay, we can move along. Then November 23rd, they head to Norman, Oklahoma to take on the Oklahoma Sooners, 10-win team a year ago. I got Oklahoma winning this, guys.
It seems like you have the Bama losing most of these 50-50 games.
I think there's too much production gone to me, and too much of there's too much change to me to really buy into them being a one-loss team here. Or something like that.
If you're looking at the last third of the schedule, they drop at least one between the 2 road games at LSU and at Oklahoma.
Patty C, what do you make of that game in Norman?
I think they're the dog in that game. I think Oklahoma is going to be better. Now, the one thing that's playing in Bama's favor here is that Oklahoma has a brutal back half of the slate, so maybe they're a little beat up. But
and
still,
we know Patty C has Oklahoma going to the playoffs too.
I'm high on Oklahoma, but when I look at that schedule, if I'm being honest, I don't know if they're going to make it. That's a very hard schedule, maybe the hardest in the country that Oklahoma faces. But still, I think they're going to be a lot better than people think they will, and that's a very tough road environment for Alabama to go in. I mean, they lost at Texas last year, and Oklahoma beat Texas. No. They won at Texas 2 years ago. They lost at home to Texas.
They lost at home. They should have lost at Texas because Bryce Young's knee was down. And then they end the season with the Iron Bowl against Hugh Strip Club Freeze.
That is just the fly in the ointment that could give them a third loss, even if they are only at 2 losses at this point.
Usually at home, they take care of Auburn, at least under Saban.
I'm about to say 1-6 prior to Saban. But no, I mean, look,
Governor Tommy Tuberville, or what is he, senator, ain't walking through that door.
He's gonna poison some trees. But guys, I got to be honest. I love the under. I think the under is the play. I think there's too many pieces they have to replace. I think they lack explosive players on the offensive side of the ball besides Milroe, at least that I know of, unless this 5-star freshman kid comes in. And I think that this schedule is immensely harder than last year's.
The funny thing is, I don't know if it's immensely harder because, I mean, they almost have an SEC East schedule. Those 5 games in the middle are all against former SEC East.
But they didn't get Georgia last year and Missouri. You get Georgia and Missouri.
But they got Texas out of conference last year.
But they get at Wisconsin,
which
I
don't think that's an equivalent there.
To Texas, you're right. But at the same time, like, you have Oklahoma on the schedule, which I would say is like the Texas game.
Well, I would say that at Oklahoma would be like,
not on there.
Yeah, no. But
Ole Miss to me is always a pretender. To me, like,
I'd say it's harder than last year. I don't know if it's like night and day harder. But obviously having Georgia on your schedule is never a good thing. So I agree. Looking at it here, I think there's too many possible losses. There's too many coin flip games. I think this is a 9-3 squad, and the question will be, does 9-3 get you into the playoffs? Because it probably isn't going to get you into the SEC championship game, but I still think the SEC gets 3 or 4 playoff teams. So is Alabama good enough to be that maybe 3rd or the 4th one?
Here's what's going to happen. Alabama's going to get like the 11 or 12 seed, and they're going to whoop someone's like Notre Dame's ass in the first round and be like, oh, the SEC is amazing.
I can see that.
I don't think they're a playoff team this year. I have more losses on there to me. I
think you're thinking 8-4?
I think 8-4, something like that. 7-5.
7-5. Wow.
I think there's too many question marks, and I think that schedule. I don't think it's like you. Like, I think a lot. When I look at, I think South Florida is way better this year than they were last year. Last year they had Middle Tennessee on the schedule, which was a 4-win team. Western Kentucky's a lot better than Middle Tennessee, and they've won like 6 against Middle Tennessee and 100 miles of hate. I I think Wisconsin at Wisconsin is tricky. I think that's a very, very losable game. And I even think the other games, like I said, you're getting Georgia, Tennessee, and Missouri are the three schools you don't want to play in the East. Yes, you get Vanderbilt and South Carolina, but even Vandy I expect to be a lot better this year with Jerry Kill and everybody coming over. They should have no problems with Vandy though. But I just think when I look at the schedule, I think I only have like the for sure wins being Western Kentucky, South Florida, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, and Mercer.
I think you're insane to say 7-5. Patty, let me ask you a question. What do you think is more likely, 10-2 or 7-5?
10-2.
I agree.
I disagree.
Look, here's the other thing is that it's not like Nick Saban is leaving this thing in like a state of disrepair. He is actively behind the scenes trying his best to make sure everything goes as smoothly as possible for Kalen DeBoer. This machine continues to run. Which I think is a
distraction. I think that's a distraction.
It could be. You could be right. But I think Nick Saban, as the polished professional, and it seems like he gets it on pretty much every level. I mean, except for his like interview rants. But the guy's a smart guy. I think he's going to be able to really support DeBoer. And I think Alabama's going to keep rolling. But yeah, this schedule is a lot harder. I mean, Georgia seems like a definite loss, and all those other games equates to at least one other loss. Whether they go to 3, I mean, that's why it's 9.5.
All I'm saying is they were 1-0 in close games in 2020. Since then, they've been playing 5 close games a year, all 3 years. Saban knew the cupboards were running a little bit empty, and I don't think DeBoer is as good as a coach as Saban. So I think 7-5 is much more likely than 10-2. I would be shocked if they go 10-2 with this.
All Bama fans, direct your hate towards pick Dundee over.
I don't hate Alabama. Look, I like Kalen DeBoer. I'm just saying.
We did this last year with Alabama. I feel like it was like, what was it, 12-0 or 9-3
or 9-3, yeah.
And I think I took more likely to 12-0. I think you took more likely 9-3. They went 11-1. I'm the smartest man alive.
There you go.
But it didn't happen. 12-0 or 9-3 didn't happen. So.
You can definitely paint me a picture where they're 8-4, but I don't think Bama is going to fall as far down as 7-5.
I would even say last year, and I even think that dilutes the stats of like
they should have lost to Auburn.
A lot of those games, dude. Remember LSU was tied with them when Jalen Daniels gets knocked out of the game. Right?
Yeah, wasn't
the Arkansas game was close.
Arkansas game was 24. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The A&M game, the South Florida game was close. I mean, to me, this is a much worse team than a year ago from a roster standpoint. And you have just too much change. It takes time to build that. And to me, I just don't think it's there in year one.
And here's Jalen Milroe cannot throw the ball, and that's what they need him to do in DeBoer's offense. So if he doesn't get a lot better, they're going to be in a little bit of trouble.
I love the -130 to not make the playoffs.
That's an interesting bet. So let me ask you this: can you bet on how many SEC teams are going to make it? Is that out there anywhere? Because
probably is. I haven't looked, but I think it. Well, I believe that. Like,
tell me, there's 4 teams from the SEC that makes the playoffs. Who are they? Georgia, Texas,
LSU,
A&M, Missouri. Who?
Yeah, I think those. I think
A&M.
We've touched on this on our schedule release episode. Go back and listen to our SEC
Maybe
schedule. Yeah. Well, what do we like schedule wise? Ole Miss, A&M, Mizzou have great schedules. I think.
True.
Now you have these gigantic conferences. The schedule is going to matter. You saw that with Louisville in the ACC or Oklahoma State in the Big 12 last year. They weren't in my opinion, they weren't the second best teams in the conference. They just had great schedules to get them there. I think that's going to become a bigger and bigger role in college football.
Ooh, and let me ask you this.
What's that?
The media, how are they going to want to spin this? Are they going to want to like say, okay, this guy's not living up to Saban? Are they going to go, okay, the king is gone. Let's drag these guys down.
Well, that's why it's such a risky move for him, is because they're not used to what Nick touched on this. They haven't had a down year really in a long time. A down year for them was 9-3 or something in the regular season. And I really would be surprised. To me, like I said, I would be surprised if they even went 9-3, because I just think there's too many potholes. I just think
assume they're 9-3. How does the media want to rank them? Are they going to want to like keep Alabama in the picture?
Does their name alone, bring them into the playoffs? or will they choose another team that's maybe 9-3 over them?
Yeah, a lot of it comes on like how whatever team they beat and whatever team they lose to, whether that be Tennessee, Oklahoma, I guess even Wisconsin, but certainly Missouri, how those teams fare, in a head-to-head matchup. One of those teams is probably going to get in.
There probably won't be 4 SEC teams, if that's the number that make it to the playoffs from the conference, that all are 10-2 or above.
I think they're dogs in 4 games. 4 games right there. Georgia.
So you got the under.
Yeah. Georgia, Tennessee, LSU, and Oklahoma. I think there'll be dogs in all 4 of those. And then I think they could get caught with Wisconsin. They could get caught with Missouri. They could get caught with Auburn.
I'm leaning slightly under too.
All right. Heard it here first. We're all on the under. Colby might play an alt line, though, if he can find under 8.5 or under 7.5.
I'm just saying, like, you want me to build you the worst case scenario for that? And like I said, I think the hire is a good hire, but I just think there's too much turnover in 1 year. There's too much. And you want worst case scenario is this: they lose to Wisconsin week 3, right? They beat Western Kentucky. They beat South Florida. They lose to Georgia week 4. They're 2-2. They beat Vanderbilt week 5, 3-2. Beat South Carolina 4-2. At Tennessee, they lose. Right? They come back home. Missouri beats them. Right? Then they get a bye week.
4-4 at that point.
Yeah, they get a bye week. They're at LSU. They lose. Right? Then they're home to Mercer. They win. At Auburn, at Oklahoma, they lose. They beat Auburn. Something like that.
6-6.
Worst case scenario. That worst
fine
case.
Folks in Tuscaloosa would not be happy. But
Saban went 6-6 in year 1.
Yeah, but he was taking over for not Nick Saban.
Who is on this team though, dude? We just went through this. They had
potential Heisman Trophy candidate.
They're not going 6-6. They're not going 7-5. 8-4 would be a disaster. 9-3 seems kind of likely.
I would not be shocked. It's, like I said, 126 in returning production, and to me, that's something that stands out. Something that I know it's getting harder and harder for people like us to break down because of the fucking insane transfer portal. But to me, he went 8-0 in close games last year. I don't believe that's sustainable. And we'll see. Look, I think the hire will work out long term. I just think you got to be patient through this year.
Agreed.
All right, folks, subscribe to the College Football Experience because we're just getting started. We're going to break down all 134 teams with a solo podcast for every single team in the land. Give Patty C a follow on Twitter at PattyC831. NC Nick's on Twitter at NC__NICK. I'm on Twitter at TheColbyD. The College Football Experience is on Twitter at TCE on SGPN. Please, if you can, hop over to iTunes, give us a 5-star review. And also youtube.com/The College Experience. We talk college football year round on this show, as you'll see if you go over there. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button, and let us know your thoughts. Maybe you disagree. Like I said, it wouldn't shock me if you went 9-3, but at the same time, I just think it's too much. You're asking too much with that schedule.
Either way, you're taking the under.
Dude, I'll be honest. I know it's our first preview, and we're going switching up. Over the years, we've done alphabetically. We're going SEC first, followed by the Mountain West. We're going to do 1 power, 1 mid-major. So,
but you feel pretty good about this one.
I wouldn't be surprised this was on my locks episode. I just think it's too hard of a schedule to go through. Like I said, I think
some tough games on that schedule.
Yeah, and Madison's going to be on fire for that game. I think that's a trap game. Folks, subscribe. All right. Until next time. And check out the Sports Gambling Podcast. Check out the Stadium Heads Podcast. Myself and Michael Barker, a.k.a. College Football Campus Tours. We talk college football stadiums.
A.k.a.
and why college,
the GOAT.
Yes, and why college football is the greatest form of football we have on this planet. The history, the games, the stadiums. Check out the college football. Check out the Stadium Heads Podcast, as well as the FCS College Football Experience. Look, Bama fans, you want to know about Mercer? We got you covered. The FCS College Football Experience. We love college football, and we never stop talking college football. Also, check out Noah Beanick at the College Baseball Experience. Roll Tide, all right? Look, maybe I'm wrong. All right, maybe Jay Barker 2.0 is sitting there, all right? Until next time, folks, this is the College Football Experience, Alabama Crimson Tide style. You better start thinking about yours, and we out of here.
Run and shoot. We can really run and shoot.